This morning on Houston Newsmakers, terrorism on U.S. soil. A mass shooting in California stirs new concerns in this country. The killers were followers of Islam. What does that do to put a further strain on the way Islam is viewed in America and in Houston? The executive director of the Council on Islamic Relations in Houston is here. State Representative Sylvester Turner and former Kemah Mayor Bill King are the last candidates standing for mayor. How close is the race and why? Our expert weighs in on what will tip this election and other races up for grabs. What does open enrollment mean for you? The president of Blue Cross Blue Shield Southeast Texas is here with what you need to know.
From KPRC Channel 2, this is Houston Newsmakers with Khambrel Marshall.
It's happened again. Innocent victims gunned down in America. This time it happened in San Bernardino, California, when a man and woman burst into a state-run center for people with developmental disabilities and killed more than a dozen, injured many more. The man and woman were husband and wife, Islamic, putting a volatile spin on yet another mass killing in America. Incredibly, last Wednesday's shooting was only the latest in a number of mass shootings in the United States. This one was different in that it involved a woman and one of the shooters, and both shooters proclaiming Islam as their faith. It puts a much different perspective on this shooting. What does this do to the way that many Americans view Islam? With me this morning, Mustafa Carroll, the executive director of the Houston office on the Council on American Islamic Relations. Mustafa, good morning.
Good morning.
Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having us.
What was your reaction when you heard about these shootings?
Well, I was saying I'm praying that this is not a Muslim. Not that it makes it any better. To me, you know, we have much too often too many of these mass killings and too many murders in this country, period. But I was really dismayed because I know what the spin is going to do. And I know that people have a tendency to conflate what happens with a few folks with the entire Muslim population.
That's been happening a lot. What's your biggest concern about the way these shooters, the ones on Wednesday, are viewed, and as a result, the way Islam is viewed as a result of what they may perceive?
Right. Well, you know, there's this, some of the terrorist groups, ISIS is as one of them, are claiming that those Muslims who don't do what they do are not real Muslims. And unfortunately, that narrative is also taking root among some of the people who are anti-Muslim. They believe that if I say that we believe in peace and justice and living harmoniously, that we're just talking, we're just playing, and that the real Muslims are out killing folks. So, you know, they're actually buying into the rhetoric, into the language and the narrative that they actually abhor. So it's pretty difficult.
What's been the biggest challenge for followers of Islam as these violent acts continue, and these violent acts by extremists and people who really usurp the real Islam, if you will, and captivate headlines all around the world?
Absolutely. Well, on the ground, as we say, you know, you have women being harassed. We've had cases where a lady was punched. Hijab snatched off. We have a mosque being vandalized, burglarized. We have some people shooting at folks. Fortunately, it's not a majority of people, but it doesn't take a majority. It only takes a few, and only a few people keep all of this stuff going. And
the things you're just talking about, are those things that happen here in Houston?
We have had some in Houston. We're fortunate. Houston has been a pretty decent city in more ways than one. We do have issues here. We have had mass arson here. We've had, I remember last time I came on your show, we had a pig incident where somebody killed a dead pig and put him on the door, or killed a pig and put him on the door of a mosque. But we don't have the vitriol, at least blatantly, that we see in Tennessee and Florida and other parts of the country where, you know, people have really up the ante, so to speak, about their hatred for Muslims, Islam and Muslims.
What do you do now as you move forward in this country and you try to convince people that Islam is not the religion that is being perceived by people all around the world, especially as it relates to violence? What's the biggest challenge, and how do you turn that tide, so to speak? Well,
the biggest challenge, I think, and the way we attempt to turn it, is that we have to come together as a community. That we have to engage with other non-Muslims, people of faith and people of no faith, because that's going to be the most powerful tool that we can have as a country. So I'm not looking just at what it does for Muslims, but I think one of the things that people don't know is that in probably 80% of the cases that are reported to the FBI is coming from Muslims. If you look at the underwear bomber's father reported his son after he left to go to Syria or wherever he was going. He reported, and Muslims reported the guy that left the SUV in New York that was going to blow up Times Square. It was Muslims who did that, and it's Muslims that are engaging. Unfortunately, we don't know who these people are. It's not like, you know, they tell us, oh, we're going to do something. They're secretive. People who are doing criminal things don't normally tell everybody.
In the meantime, you have Senator Cruz, for example, on the Syrian refugee crisis, indicating that he'd like to maybe see Christian Syrians come in and not Muslim Syrians. So there is an image that you are fighting even at the highest levels of our government. Yeah,
it's sad. You know, when you hear things like that, those people are running for their lives. And the Syrians have always been Christians, Muslims. In fact, if you know, Damascus has some great religious history behind it, but those people have been living in peace, but they're in the middle of a civil war, and they're running from certain death in many cases. And they're, you know, got 2 million in Turkey and different places around the world. And I don't think it matters. I think that we don't have a religious test in this country. This country was founded on religious freedom. The forefathers and mothers who came to this country came seeking religious freedom. And so I think we're going down the wrong path to doing that.
Well, I appreciate you coming in. I know it's a tough time for you and the folks who are at CARE, who are trying to make sure that people understand what your faith is all about. Thank you for coming in, and good luck as you continue to try to change the dialogue into something positive as opposed to
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Carol, thank you for coming in. You know, this latest shooting, of course, will become a political topic about what to do to stop the sort of horrific killings that happen in California, no matter what side of the conversation you take. And I'd hope that all sides would agree that something needs to be done. The reality of today in the United States is drastically different than the reality of years ago. I couldn't say it any better than the way Harry Smith said it on the Today Show the morning after the California shootings.
Let there be peace on earth.
On a night like last night, who of us doesn't think about the places we go?
2, 1!
The streets we walk down, the malls we shop in. Is the subway safe? What about our schools, our churches? The worshipers at a prayer meeting at the Emmanuel AME Church thought they were safe on a Wednesday night last June. The students at an Oregon community college thought they were safe this past October, as did a reporter and cameraman this past August. A movie theater in Colorado, an elementary school in Connecticut. The events come and they go, and then they come again. Ours is the only nation in the civilized world where these events happen with this kind of numbing regularity. The BBC reported Wednesday's shooting as
just another day in the United States of America.
President Obama after the shooting in Oregon in October.
Our thoughts and prayers are not enough. And it does nothing to prevent this carnage from being inflicted someplace else in America.
There is something wrong with a society where the recipe for murder and mayhem is so easily concocted. If we learn that perpetrators are religious terrorists, then we'll be enraged. We'll have someone to blame. But what of all the other shootings, the ones that so often fill our newscasts? Where, we wonder, does it end?
Back to talk about the Houston's mayor's race when Houston Newsmakers continues. Early voting is underway in Houston until Wednesday, then Election Day is Saturday with the mayor's seat up for grabs along with city controller and 7 council seats and HISD board seats as well. Here to help us make some sense of this, Professor Renee Cross, Associate Director of the Hobby Center for Public Policy at the University of Houston. Professor Cross, thank you for being here this morning.
Thank you for having me.
Interesting runoff election coming up. How do you describe the mayor's race and who should be favored, and how could that dynamic change?
Well, at this point, just because of the demographics of the city of Houston, I would say the race favors Sylvester Turner. He's got a solid legislative record. People know him. He's run for mayor before. Has a solid African-American voter base that turns out in large or high numbers, as well as the endorsement of key figures like Adrian Garcia, who hopefully will sway Garcia's supporters to Turner. So just based on the numbers, or demographics and the numbers, I would say Turner. However, this year has brought a lot of surprises.
Right, it has.
And we certainly saw that last month and how the effects of Prop 1 affected across the board, across the ballot. And even though Prop 1 obviously isn't on the ballot this time around, that doesn't mean that its effects won't be lingering.
You know, and after that, the Republican Party sent out a notice to all of its members, get out and vote, get out and vote. And it was kind of, they didn't say get out and vote for Bill King, but it seemed to be implied that they clearly are hoping that that voting block continues to come out, because that block came out in much higher numbers than anybody expected.
Right.
So that could change the dynamic a bit, could it not?
Yes, but also keep in mind that for Prop 1, the coalition was not only, say, white Republicans from the West Side, but many conservative African Americans. Now, they more than likely will not vote for Bill King. So, you know.
Although I did see this week a group of African American pastors came out and endorsed Bill King, and the mayor endorsed Sylvester Turner. Do endorsements help? Sometimes, I guess it doesn't hurt to have them, I guess.
Right, well, most of the time. Sometimes it can hurt, depending on who's doing the endorsement. However, in local level races, endorsements can matter more because people don't pay as much attention to, say, a mayor's race, and certainly not a controller's race or a city council race. So endorsements may give a shortcut to some voters who they just aren't paying attention.
Right. Speaking about paying attention, the tone of this election has certainly changed. We've seen a lot of conversation about some negative ads that have been out just recently, and I know that Sylvester Turner's ads were negative, really, in tone toward King, and King's ad was, "I will not go negative."
Right.
Negative ads, help or hurt?
Well, we all say that we don't like negative ads, and the research backs that up. You know, people year after year say no negative ads. That's why they get turned off on politics. However, the research also shows that it does sway voters, and sometimes it propels them to get out and vote. And in a case like this, where you already have low turnout in a city election, you need all the help you can get in propelling people to vote.
Right. And you're right, and this kind of runoff, that typically is a problem, is it not? After the main election, people just don't get out to vote. Is this going to be all about who gets whose base supporters to get out?
It is. Turnout obviously is always important, but definitely in a race like this. In recent, wide open mayoral races, we've seen the runoffs drop usually about 20% or so, except for back in 1997 when we actually saw an increase of turnout in the runoff. Again, this is where endorsements could play a part. For example, the Turner team has some Democratic state representatives out block walking, out mobilizing their districts for Turner. Those kind of things definitely matter in races like this.
This is supposedly a nonpartisan race, but it certainly is not taking on that tone, especially this year.
Right.
It seems not to. Let's talk about the controller's race. We got two individuals there. One is an accountant, the other was the associate in the controller's office now. One has a father who is a council member. Who's got the upper hand in this one?
That one I think is a little harder to call. Again, because people are paying even less attention to the controller's race than they are the mayor's race. Both of them are relatively new to politics. I mean, Frazier did run one time before, ran against an incumbent, but did well. But he certainly does have a household name. Chris Brown, of course, is the son of Peter Brown, and he's been involved in City Hall for years, but behind the scenes. So both of them have a lot to do in getting their name out. I don't think that Chris Brown would necessarily have the same natural advantage that Turner might have in the city of Houston that tends to vote Democratic. However, having his father's support, and going out and working the neighborhoods that he's had long-term relationships with will count.
Well, and clearly in that race, that person is going to be pretty key in the financial issues of the city. So it's been, even though people don't want to pay much attention.
Right.
Professor Cross, thank you for coming in.
Well,
appreciate it. We're out of time. We want to talk more about the politics of the council seats, but we'll get you back another time.
Sounds great.
Thank you for coming in.
Okay.
Appreciate it. Just ahead, are you prepared to make the right decisions about your medical plan? The president of Blue Cross Blue Shield, Southeast Texas, is here with questions you should be sure to answer. That's next when Houston Newsmakers continues.
PRC Channel 2. This is Houston Newsmakers with Khambrel Marshall.
And welcome back to Houston Newsmakers, and welcome to Dr. Robert Morrow, who is the president of Blue Cross Blue Shield of Southeast Texas and Houston, or is it Houston and Southeast Texas?
Either way, Houston and Southeast Texas.
Thank you for being here. So we've been talking about why it's important for people this time of the year. This is time to select what they're going to do for health care coverage. Why is Blue Cross Blue Shield so involved in wanting to make sure that people know what to do?
Oh, critically important for people to have insurance in order to maintain their health. I mean, that's very important. And the reason we're doing it is we've been doing it for over 80 years in Texas. As a matter of fact, Blue Cross and Blue Shield started here in Texas over 80 years ago. And we've been providing access to high quality, low cost health care for that time. And so we actually have fully supported the Be Covered Texas campaign, which is a campaign to get the word out to Texans about how to sign up for insurance, information that they need to have with regards to insurance. Because again, having insurance is critically important, not only to help you stay healthy, but also for those times when you have a major illness or an unexpected injury. That's really important for that.
Does the Affordable Care Act that's been in place now, does that help Blue Cross Blue Shield in terms of helping to get the word out? I mean, how does that relationship work?
Well, what we have done through the Be Covered Texas campaign is we have actually brought together statewide about 170 organizations, 70 of them right here in the Houston area, and these are community organizations, civic organizations, government organizations, faith-based organizations. And the intent of that is to get the word out to people about their options to sign up for health care coverage under the Affordable Care Act.
You don't necessarily tell people what to sign up for. You tell them how to look for what's best for them.
Exactly. I mean, what we want people to know is, first of all, how critically important it is for them to get health insurance. Sometimes it's not great to be first, and Texas is first in the rate of uninsured, and we don't like that. As a matter of fact, there are over 390,000 Houstonians who are currently uninsured who could gain insurance coverage through the exchanges.
Why do you think that it is that way still? I mean, the message, certainly we've been pounding the message out. I mean, media and your organization has been putting that message out.
Yes, you know, first of all, health care insurance can be very confusing, and particularly for a large segment of our population who've never had insurance before. I think also a lot of people think that they can't afford it. Well, actually, so for last year, the people who signed up for insurance on the exchanges, about 85% of them were eligible for some form of financial assistance. Now, that assistance could come in the form of tax credits that would help them with their monthly cost of insurance, and for others, it actually could help cover the out-of-pocket costs associated with their health care.
What kind of deadlines are involved for this coverage period?
Okay, so open enrollment, which is what it's called, it's how you sign up for the exchange during the open enrollment period. That is going on right now. It started in November, and it will go through the end of January. However, if you want your coverage to start January 1st, you have to have signed up by December 15th.
So it takes a while. If you want to, the following year, I mean, you can go till January 31st, or...
Open enrollments have had different time periods over the last years, but for this year, what's critically important to know is that it will go through the end of January. But again, if you want to get insurance for January 1, you need to have signed up by December 15th.
I guess when you get ready to go sign up, there's certain things that you have to have in order. You got to know different things about people in your family, how much people make. I mean, there's certain things you have to know.
I think there are probably 4 basic things that you should probably have. One, you need to have some sort of proof of citizenship or legal residency. That could be a Social Security number, an immigration number, something like that. You need to have some proof that you actually live here in Texas. That could be a driver's license or a utility bill. You need to have some indication of your family's income for whoever will be covered, because that's how it is determined whether or not you're eligible for some financial assistance. And then lastly, if you already have insurance, it's a good idea to bring your insurance card or at least your insurance number in the company, so that when you sign up, that can be helpful for helping guide you in your decision.
I want to make sure that people know where they can get more information, because clearly we don't want to be first in the category you're talking about. We got to get more people involved in getting insured. In addition to healthcare.gov, you can go to the Blue Cross Blue Shield site. It's becoveredtexas.org or 866-427-7492. That's a Monday through Friday service from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m.
That's correct, for the toll-free number.
Good deal. Thank you, Dr. Murrow. Appreciate all you do, and hopefully we can get people signed up some kind of way, get insurance so we can be a healthier community.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate you coming in. Coming up, a special announcement about next week's Houston Newsmakers and the mayor's race. That's next when Houston Newsmakers continues. Next week here on Houston Newsmakers, a live program which will feature the new mayor-elect of the city of Houston. Both candidates have agreed to appear on this program next Sunday morning should they win the election Saturday night. So that means either Bill King or Sylvester Turner will be here to talk about the next steps as they prepare to take the helm of the city of Houston. We'll also have input from Gary Polland, the former chair of the Harris County Republican Party, City Council member Dwight Boykins, and Rice University political scientist Dr. Mark Jones, with their insight into the mayor's race and the other races and the new face of city government, whatever that may be. Certainly, you may want to join our social media conversations next week. To do that, follow us on Twitter at KPRC Khambrel, hashtag HOU Newsmakers. And if there are subjects or other stories you'd like for me to take on, you can email me at HoustonNewsmakers@click2Houston.com. Thank you to my guests for joining me this morning, and to all of you for tuning in. If you'd like to check out some of the previous shows or get information on today's program, go to click2Houston.com, and under the community banner, click on Newsmakers. Have a great day. I'll see you back here again next week for our special live Houston Newsmakers.